I remember that moment like it was yesterday. Sitting in the third row of Ms. Harrison's 8th grade science class, my arm stretched so high it made my shoulder ache. The question she'd asked about the periodic table wasn't particularly difficult, and I knew the answer. I always knew the answers. "Can anyone tell me which element has the atomic number 8? Ms. Harrison asked, her eyes scanning the classroom deliberately. My hand shot up immediately. I even wiggled my fingers slightly. That little gesture that says, "Pick me, I know this." But as usual, her gaze swept past me like I was made of glass. "Anyone?" she repeated, ignoring my raised hand. When Billy Matthews raised his hand halfway, she pounced. "Yes, Billy." Is it oxygen?" he said, sounding unsure. "That's correct, Billy. Very good." I slowly lowered my hand, feeling that familiar heaviness settle in my chest. It wasn't that Billy shouldn't have been called on. It was that I never was. This hadn't happened once, or twice. It had been happening for months, every day, every class, without fail. My name is Jada Williams, and during the 8th grade, my science teacher pretended I didn't exist. I wasn't always invisible. When I first started at Westbrook, middle school that September, things were different. I came from Pinecrest Elementary, where I'd been known as the science girl, the one who won the district science fair 2 years in a row, and who read astronomy books during recess. My 6th grade teacher had even written to NASA about me, and they sent me a package of space mission patches and a letter encouraging me to keep reaching for the stars. But at Westbrook, something changed. I noticed it gradually at first. Miss Harrison would call on other students more often. Then it became obvious when she would acknowledge every raised hand except mine. By October, it was undeniable. She was, deliberately ignoring me. The only black girl in advanced science. That morning after the oxygen question, I stayed behind after class. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say. "Ms. Harrison." My voice came out smaller than I intended. She looked up from her desk, her expression neutral. "Yes." "I was wondering, I've been raising my hand a lot, in class, but you haven't called on me. Did I do something wrong?" She shuffled some papers, not meeting my eyes. "I try to give everyone a chance to participate, Jada. Sometimes the quiet students need encouragement to speak up. But I've had my hand up every day for weeks, and you never call on me." Her lips tightened. "I'm sure it just seems that way. Now, don't you have another class to get to?" I nodded and left, feeling hollow. It didn't just seem that way. I'd been counting. In the past month, she'd called on me exactly 0 times, despite my raised hand in every single class. That evening, I told my mother what had happened. She sat at our kitchen table, her nursing scrubs still on from her shift, a mug of tea cooling, between her hands. "Are you absolutely sure, Jada?" she asked, her forehead creased with concern. "Sometimes teachers have different methods of classroom management." "I'm sure, Mom. She acts like I'm not even there." My voice cracked. "Like I'm invisible." Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You are not invisible, baby. You are brilliant and beautiful and deserving of every opportunity." "Then why won't she call on me?" I whispered. Mom was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes people have biases they don't even recognize in themselves," she finally said. "But that doesn't mean you stop trying. That doesn't mean you make yourself smaller. What should I do?" "Keep raising your hand, keep knowing the answers, and start documenting everything." The next day, I brought a small notebook to class and made a tally mark every time Ms. Harrison ignored my raised hand. By the end of the week, I had 27 marks. I showed my mother, who nodded grimly. "I'm going to email her Mom said, "and then we'll see what happens next." What happened next was a terse reply from Ms. Harrison, explaining that she had a complex classroom management strategy, and that she was deliberately encouraging participation from students who were less naturally inclined to speak up. She assured my mother that she valued all her students equally. But nothing changed. My hand would go up, and Ms. Harrison's eyes would slide right past me. Sometimes I'd catch her looking directly at me before deliberately choosing someone else. Each time it happened, I felt smaller. Each time, a little more of my enthusiasm drained away. By December, I had stopped raising my hand altogether. What was the point? I still did all my work, still aced every test, but the joy had evaporated. Science, which had once been my favorite subject, became a daily exercise in invisibility. My friend Tasha noticed the change in me. We were sitting together at lunch one day when she nudged my arm. "What happened to you? You used to be so excited about everything." I pushed my mashed potatoes around my plate. "Nothing happened." "That's a lie." "You barely talk anymore, and you never raise your hand in science, even though I know you know." "All the answers." I looked up at her. "What's the point? She's never going to call on me." Tasha frowned. "Because you're black? Is that what you think?" I shrugged. I hadn't wanted to say it out loud, to give that possibility life. "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe she just doesn't like me." "That's messed up," Tasha said, her voice rising. "You should tell someone." I told my mom. She emailed Ms. Harrison, but nothing changed. "Then tell someone else. Tell the principal." I shook my head. "And say what? That my teacher doesn't call on me? That doesn't sound like a big deal to anyone else." "It is a big deal," Tasha insisted. "It's your education." I know now that Tasha was right, but at 13, all I could see was how small my problem would sound to others, how easily Miss Harrison could dismiss it, how it would be her word against mine, and she was the adult with authority. January came, bringing with it a new semester, and an announcement that made a ripple through the school. Dr. Marcus Jenkins, a renowned astrophysicist who had worked on several NASA missions, would be visiting Westbrook to give a series of lectures. He was an alumnus of our school district and had gone on to become one of the leading experts in his field. And he was black. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of excitement. Dr. Jenkins was something of a hero to me. I'd read about his work on exoplanets and watched his TED Talk 3 times. The idea of meeting him in person made my heart race. The day of his first lecture, the auditorium was packed with students from every grade. I managed to secure a seat near the front, my notebook ready. Dr. Jenkins was tall and distinguished, with close-cropped gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He spoke with a measured confidence that immediately commanded attention. His lecture was about the search for habitable planets outside our solar system, and it was fascinating. He explained complex concepts in ways that made them accessible without dumbing them down. When he opened the floor for questions, dozens of hands shot up, including mine. Dr. Jenkins pointed to a boy in the back, then to a girl on the right side of the auditorium. After answering their questions, his eyes scanned the crowd again. This time he pointed at me. "Yes, the young lady in the blue sweater." My heart pounded as I stood up. "Dr. Jenkins, I was wondering about the atmospheric composition needed for a planet to potentially support life. Does it have to be oxygen-based like Earth, or could other elements create viable atmospheres?" A smile spread across his face. "That's an excellent question. While oxygen is crucial for life as we know it on Earth, there are theoretical models for alternative biochemistries. He launched into a detailed answer that had me scribbling notes frantically. When he finished, he said, "What's your name, young lady?" "Jada Williams," I replied. Well, Jada Williams, that was the kind of question that drives scientific inquiry forward. Keep asking questions like that. Pride bloomed in my chest. For the first time in months, I felt seen. After the lecture, as students filed out, I lingered, clutching my notebook. Dr. Jenkins was speaking with a few teachers, including Ms. Harrison, who was nodding enthusiastically at whatever he was saying. I gathered my courage and approached them. "Excuse me, Dr. Jenkins," I said. He turned to me with a warm smile. "Ah, Jada Williams with the excellent question about alternative atmospheres." Miss Harrison's expression flickered with surprise, then something else I couldn't quite read. "I just wanted to thank you for your lecture," I said. "I've been following your work on exoplanets for a while now." "Have you really?" His eyebrows rose. "Most middle schoolers aren't reading astrophysics. Journals." "I found your paper on the potential habitability of Proxima Centauri online. I didn't understand all of it, but the parts about the red dwarf's radiation effects were really interesting." Dr. Jenkins looked genuinely impressed. "You read my paper on Proxima Centauri b? That's university-level material." I nodded suddenly, self-conscious under Miss Harrison's stare. "Jada must be one of your star pupils. Isn't that right, Miss Harrison?" Dr. Jenkins asked. There was a pause. Miss Harrison's smile seemed frozen. "Jada is certainly dedicated to science," she finally said. "More than dedicated, I'd say," Dr. Jenkins replied. "Exceptional. Young minds like hers are exactly why I make these school visits." He turned back to me. "Do you have any other questions about the paper you read?" I did have questions, many of them, and for the next 10 minutes, Dr. Jenkins and I discussed red dwarfs, solar flares, and planetary magnetic fields, while Ms. Harrison stood by, her smile growing, increasingly strained. Eventually, Dr. Jenkins glanced at his watch. "I need to prepare for my next lecture, but this has been a delightful conversation, Jada. You know, I'm giving a special workshop tomorrow for students interested in pursuing careers in astrophysics. It's limited to 10 students. Would you like to attend?" "Yes," I exclaimed, then tried to dial back my enthusiasm. "I mean, yes, I would really like that." "Excellent. Ms. Harrison, I assume you can add Jada to the list?" Ms. Harrison nodded stiffly. "Of course. I'll take care of it." As Dr. Jenkins walked away, I was left alone with Ms. Harrison. The silence between us felt heavy. "Thank you for adding me to the list," I said quietly. She adjusted her glasses. "You should get to your next class, Jada." I turned to leave, but then stopped. Something had shifted. For months, I had been shrinking myself, accepting my invisibility. But Dr. Jenkins had seen me. He had valued my questions, my curiosity, my intellect. And in that moment I found a courage I thought I had lost. "Ms. Harrison," I said, turning back to face her. "Why don't you ever call on me in class?" She blinked, clearly startled by my directness. I call on many students, Jada. But never me. I've raised my hand every day for months, and you've never once called on me. Why?" Her face flushed. "That's simply not true. I'm sure I've called on you numerous times. You haven't. Not once since October." My voice was steady, even as my hands trembled. "Is it because I'm black?" Her eyes widened. "Absolutely not! How dare you make such an accusation? I don't see color in my classroom." Then why am I invisible to you?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment, she seemed genuinely at a loss. "You're not invisible, Jada. That's ridiculous. Then call on me tomorrow, and the next day, and every day after that when I raise my hand." Before she could respond, I walked away, my heart pounding but my back straight. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The next day in science class, something strange happened. When Ms. Harrison asked a question about chemical reactions, I raised my hand, more out of habit than expectation. To my shock, she called on me. "Jada," I answered correctly, my voice stronger than I expected. Ms. Harrison nodded, her expression unreadable, and moved on. It happened again later in the class, and again the day after that. She was calling on me. Not every time, but enough that I no longer felt invisible. Something had changed. Whether it was my confrontation or Dr. Jenkins' obvious respect for me, or both, I couldn't be sure. But the shift was undeniable. The workshop with Dr. Jenkins was everything I had hoped for, and more. 10 of us, all chosen for our interest in astrophysics, spent 3 hours working through real data from the Kepler telescope, looking for patterns that might indicate exoplanets. Dr. Jenkins moved around the room, offering guidance and asking probing questions that pushed our thinking further. When he came to my workstation, he looked over my calculations. "You've caught something interesting here, Jada. This periodic dip could indeed indicate a planet, and from the size of the dip, it could be Earth-like. Good work." At the end of the workshop, he addressed us all. "Science needs diverse perspectives to solve the complex problems facing our world, and to explore beyond it. Each of you brings a unique viewpoint shaped by your experiences, your background, your identity. That diversity of thought is not just valuable, it's essential." His eyes met mine briefly, and I felt a surge of emotion. He understood without me having to explain. As we were leaving, Dr. Jenkins handed me a business card. "My email is on there. If you have more questions about astrophysics or anything else, feel free to reach out. And Jada, don't let anyone dim your light. The universe needs it." I clutched that card like a talisman for weeks afterward. Sometimes when Ms. Harrison's gaze would slide past me again, because old habits die hard, I would touch the card in my pocket and remind myself that I was not invisible, that my questions mattered, that my presence mattered. The rest of the school year was better. Not perfect, but better. Ms. Harrison called on me more consistently, though I could tell it wasn't always comfortable for her. Sometimes I caught her looking at me with a puzzled expression, as if she was trying to figure something out. One day in late May, as the school year was winding down, she asked me to stay after class. "Jada," she began, her fingers fidgeting, with a pen. "I want to apologize." I stared at her, speechless. "I've been doing some reflection," she continued, "and some reading about implicit bias, about how we can have prejudices we don't even recognize in ourselves." She took a deep breath. "I didn't see what I was doing to you. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. Either way, it was wrong. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to accept her apology immediately, to make her feel better, but another part needed to be honest. "It hurt," I said simply. "Every time you looked past me, it hurt." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I know, and I'm truly sorry. You're one of the brightest students I've ever taught, and I failed you." "Are there others?" I asked. "Other students you don't see?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. I don't know. But I'm going to be more aware now. I'm going to do better. It wasn't a perfect apology, and it didn't undo months of being invisible. But it was a start, a recognition, and for that moment, it was enough. When I started high school the following year, I carried the lessons of 8th grade with me. I learned that sometimes you have to speak up for yourself, even when it's scary. I learned that one person seeing you, truly seeing you, can make all the difference. And I learned that people can change, can recognize their biases, and work to overcome them, even if the process is messy and imperfect. I kept in touch with Dr. Jenkins throughout high school. He became a mentor, reviewing my science fair projects, recommending books, and eventually writing a glowing recommendation letter for my college applications. With his encouragement, I applied to prestigious programs in astrophysics and was accepted to several, including his alma mater. Now, 15 years later, I'm Dr. Jada Williams, an associate professor of astrophysics, specializing in exoplanet atmospheres. My research team recently discovered evidence of water vapor in the atmosphere of a potentially habitable exoplanet, a finding that made headlines around the world. And every semester I make time to visit local schools, especially in predominantly Black neighborhoods, to talk about space, science, and the importance of diverse voices in scientific discovery. Last month I was invited back to Westbrook Middle School to give a lecture. The auditorium looked smaller than I remembered, but the excited faces of the students brought me right back to that day when Dr. Jenkins had seen me, had valued my questions when no one else did. After my talk, a young girl with braids and bright eyes approached me. "Dr. Williams, I have a question about black holes that wasn't in your lecture. Is it okay if I ask?" "Always," I told her. "Curiosity is what drives science forward." As I was packing up my presentation materials, a woman approached me. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, but I recognized her immediately. "Miss Harrison," I said, surprised. "It's actually Mrs. Collins now," she said with a small smile. "I got married. But yes, it's me." "You're still teaching here?" She nodded. "Going on 25 years now, though I'm retiring next year." She hesitated. "Your lecture was wonderful, Jada. Or should I say Dr. Williams?" "Thank you," I replied, still processing the unexpected reunion. "I want you to know," she said, her voice lower. "That day, when you confronted me about not calling on you, it changed me. It changed how I teach. I've spent years working on recognizing my biases, on making sure every student in my classroom is seen and heard." She paused. "You made me a better teacher, and I never got to properly thank you for that." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. All these years later, and we were still carrying the echoes of that 8th grade science class. "I'm glad," I said honestly, "that something good came from that time." She nodded, then hesitated again. "Actually, there's something else. I'm retiring, as I mentioned, but I've been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. It's manageable for now, but it's part of why I'm stepping back from teaching." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, meaning it. "The thing is," she continued, "I've been trying to organize all my teaching materials to donate to newer teachers, but with the tremors, it's become difficult. When I saw you were coming to speak, I wondered if you might know any graduate students who could use some part-time work helping me sort through everything. I can pay, of course." I thought about it for a moment. Here was Miss Harrison, the teacher who had once made me feel invisible, now asking for my help. There was a poetic irony to it that wasn't lost on me, but there was also an opportunity for healing, for closure. Actually, I said, I have an undergraduate research assistant who's planning to go into science education. She's brilliant and organized, and I think she'd be perfect. Her name is Zora, and she happens to be looking for some extra work this summer. Relief washed over Mrs. Collins' face. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Jada. As we exchanged contact information, I thought about the long, winding path that had brought us to this moment. How the pain of being invisible had ultimately led me to ensure others were seen. How Ms. Harrison's failure had become a catalyst for her growth. How sometimes the universe has a way of bringing things full circle. Before we parted, she said, "You know, I still think about that day with Dr. Jenkins. How he immediately recognized what I had missed, or refused to see. Your brilliance, your potential. Sometimes we all need someone to help us see more clearly," I replied. Walking out of Westbrook Middle School that day, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't expected. The girl who had once been invisible was now not only seen but sought out, respected, valued, and in turn, I had dedicated my life to ensuring others, especially young black girls with stars in their eyes, knew they were seen too. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or underestimated, know that your story matters. Your questions deserve answers. Your hand deserves to be called on. And somewhere there's a Dr. Jenkins waiting to see you, to really see you, for exactly who you are and all you can become. Have you ever experienced a teacher or authority figure who didn't see your potential? Or maybe you were the one who failed to see someone else? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone who might need a reminder that they deserve to be seen, fully and completely, just as they are.